What's up guys, hope you guys are having a great day. Today I will be showing you how to install aftermarket wheel studs on a 240SX. These are the wheel studs that I chose. They're ISR Performance. These I believe are like 60 millimeter long. I forgot the actual specs. I may be wrong, but I believe they're 60. Now the 240 has two different sizes of knurl. I think that's how you say it. Sorry if my English. But the size here on the bottom, this size changes from 12 to 14 on the 240. Now if you have a S14, I believe it's S14, and if you have a S13, it's 12, if I'm not mistaken. But on Nicole's car, it has a 5-lock conversion, which I don't know if it has aftermarket hubs or Nissan hubs. So I went ahead and bought 12 and I bought 14 just to be sure. One of the problems you have when there's been 240s is that the wheel studs, sometimes they wiggle loose, especially after changing tires so many times. So to prevent this, you tack weld them in place, but not fully welded, because you have to remove it, you can break the weld. You don't want to fully weld the stud in, and then if that stud strips out, you have to remove the whole hub. One of the reasons I chose to go with an extended wheel stud is because it allows you to run an open-end lug nut, so you can run more splines on the lug nut so it holds the wheel together. Normally you get about this much sometimes holding the wheel together, versus an extended wheel stud you can have like about twice or 3 times the threads holding it together, so it's more safe. This might be an issue because Nicole has key lug nuts and I don't have the keys, so I'm gonna have to use a socket and try to get them off. That's why I showed you guys in my previous video. On my car, I actually went with a regular 17 millimeter lug nut instead of a safety tuner lug, because at the track you don't want to be carrying out with those lug nut keys, because one, they might get lost, or second, you might break one and then you can't remove your wheels. But everybody should have a 17 millimeter in their toolbox that even if you lost yours, you'll be able to find another one. Also, it makes it a lot easier because you don't have to use a wheel key on top of the socket, so it's all like wiggly and stuff. Now that I got all the wheel lug nuts out, you can see the problem. I don't know if you can see it wiggle a little bit. Look at that. That's a big problem. Now that I got the wheels off, first thing will be to remove the caliper. After I remove the caliper, I'll be able to remove the disc and have the wheel studs exposed. Also, you got this little slip-on spacer that will need to come off as well. First, we'll need to remove these 2 bolts. These are 17 millimeter bolts. They remove the whole caliper assembly. One little tip for the caliper removal and reinstallation. Right now, the brake pads are touching against the brake disc. So it's a very tight fit, which will make it a little tricky to reinstall the caliper back on. So what I like doing, I put a screwdriver and I put it in between one of the holes on the brake disc and pry a little bit, so it will create a little gap. That way when you're gonna reinstall the brake caliper, it's a lot easier. Actually, the way that this caliper is set up, it's a lot easier. It's like going over here real quick and just pry off a little bit. And now you see you got a little bit of a gap, so it'll be a lot easier to reinstall the caliper. I'm sorry guys, wrong call. They're actually 19 millimeter bolts on this thing. They're not 17. Now very carefully remove this without the pads falling off. As you can see, the pads always like to try to fall off. In the meantime, I'll just rest the caliper on the control arm so it's not hanging from the brake line. Now I can remove the brake rotor, which leaves us now with the exposed studs. I think this car already had extended wheel studs, so it's a good thing that I went with extended wheel studs again. I'll take one of these off now to match the knurl size for the other studs. It seems that there are definitely 14. It's weird, like the spline on this is like barely pronounced, versus you can see how sharp the one on this one is. So this is why this spins, because they're not really grabbing well onto the hub. Now we'll need to remove the rest of the studs. Since I am going to be welding onto this metal, it's very important that I clean it so I can get a good weld. Some brake cleaner and a wire brush can do that. To install a new wheel studs, feed it through the back. Then, since it's a lot longer and the lug nut will not fit on it, I'll use a series of nuts as spacers. Then I'll use an opening lug nut on the other side. Now with this, you can tighten the nut and it will pull the stud through. And now we have our first wheel stud is already successfully installed. Now I gotta do the other 4, and then after that I'll tie them together.
Somewhere by the emerald sea, where the moon and water meet, somewhere close to harmony, when the world is sound asleep, something's gonna...
I now have my welding equipment set up so I can start welding these things. I decided to do it with Tig Welding. It's a lot cleaner weld, also it doesn't make any splatter, so I'm gonna go ahead and weld it with this. I'm gonna fuse the base to the stud, or the stud to the base, so I don't need any filler wire. It's a very small tack to keep it from rotating, but in the event that I gotta replace the wheel stud, I can still do it. That right there should be enough of a weld to hold it from spinning.
Come and fly away with me. 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 Come and fly away with me.
It didn't seem to have good enough penetration with just fusion, so I ended up doing another run and I had a filler wire this time. Now I can just brush off the little stains from the welding. And it looks just like new now. At this point I can reinstall the rotor. The wheel spacer, and then the brake caliper. So now I gotta reinstall the brake pad into place. And then I can just slide this over, align the bolts, put the second bolt on, This is what it looks like now with the new extended wheel studs. I can at this point reinstall the wheel. I'm sorry, I was supposed to put all the lug nuts by hand first and then hit it with the gun. Always keep that practice, because if not, you can run into the issue where you can straight down or cross thread a bolt. Since we have a spacer on this wheel, the lug nut doesn't max out and the stud doesn't come out the other side. I like that it has this little cap so you can keep them closed or open if you have to. Right now you can see how deep the lug nut, or how deep the stud comes into the lug nut. So since I already got that measurement, I can go ahead and put these back in and done. Now just once I lower the car, I gotta torque them down to 80 pounds. I will show you guys how to do the other side, but it's literally the same thing. You gotta repeat the same process, but reverse. I'm gonna go ahead and do this, and then I'll keep recording once I'm done at this point. This side came out even better than the other side. Look at these nice tack welds here. Now that the car is all the way down and the wheels are touching the ground, I can actually torque down the wheels to 80 foot-pounds of torque. So I'm gonna go ahead and set up my torque wrench to 80 foot-pounds of torque. Now that I have it at 80 pounds of torque, I can go ahead and install a 19mm socket and now torque down the wheels. When installing new wheel studs, you'll realize that when you're torquing it down, it will be a lot looser than you thought. It's like the new stud is stretching out a little bit. So you want to torque them down in a star pattern and repeat the process like 4 or 5 times until you go with the wrench, and then you get an accurate reading and it doesn't keep spinning. That's another cool feature about having a digital torque wrench, because you can see a real-time reading on the torque you're putting down. It also vibrates and beeps to let you know you got to the correct torque, and it also indicates if you over torqued it by displaying a red light. I ended up having to raise the car back up because the wheel was spinning, because the car is so low that the wheel wasn't having full contact against the ground. I raised it back up and put a piece of wood underneath so I could like lower the car and put weight on it. That way I can actually torque the wheel without it spinning. That concludes today's video installing the wheel stud on a 240SX. It will be also the same application on any other car that has wheel studs. Now I gotta put my BMW back inside so I can leave it to rest. This thing looks so nice. Just look at that. Look how beautiful this car is. I kinda like want to start wrapping it already, but I gotta smooth down the edges so I can actually apply the blue vinyl that I got for it. It's a little rough, so I gotta sand all this down so it's a smooth surface. That way the vinyl will apply better. I know a lot of you guys are wondering why I haven't started on the S15. It's getting really close to that date. Now that I got Nicole's car done, I can go back to installing all the new parts on my E36. Now I have to put away my computer and stuff so I can actually leave, because I'm going to a car meet tonight. I'll be going to the drift meet of Orlando. I haven't been to a car meet in forever, so it'll be cool to make an appearance over there. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I learned a few things. Please hit the like button and subscribe. I'll see you guys tomorrow.